I couldn't stop staring at the phone. The screen lit up with a soft buzz, the notification flashing across my view like a challenge I wasn't prepared to face. Babe Red Heart Hash. It wasn't my name, and it wasn't from me. A wave of confusion hit me like a tide, pulling my thoughts under. My fingers hesitated as they hovered over the phone, the sudden intrusion of the message stirring something in my chest that felt like dread mixed with curiosity. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital, my mind heavy with the weight of the day. I hadn't expected this. Who else could it be? Who else had a claim to that term, that emoji, that intimate title? I sat there on the couch, frozen, unsure if I wanted to look. I could pretend it was nothing, maybe even forget it entirely. But I knew I wouldn't. My heartbeat quickened as I swiped the notification open. A simple text, nothing more. Just words on a screen. Are you coming over later tonight? It wasn't what I had imagined, but it wasn't what I had hoped for either. I blinked, then reread the message. A pit formed in my stomach, and I felt the familiar feeling of betrayal, cold and sharp. I had to know. Without thinking, I tapped the message to open it fully. A sudden panic gripped me, pulling my breath in shallow bursts as I looked at the conversation history. There it was, a string of messages exchanged in the past few days, between her and someone else. I felt like a voyeur, intruding on a world that wasn't mine. Yet, I couldn't look away. I had to see. The last message had been sent 2 hours ago. It was clear now. I wasn't the only one occupying her mind. And in that moment, my own heart felt as if it had been erased, replaced by something unrecognizable. I scrolled back further. More messages. More little threads of connection between her and someone else. The warmth I had once known when I thought of her name, when I thought of us, was now a ghost. Who was this? My stomach churned with anxiety and disbelief. It didn't make sense. She never mentioned anyone else. There were no signs, no late-night talks or whispered secrets. Everything had been fine, or so I thought. I glanced at the time. It was late, and I was exhausted. But exhaustion was no excuse. I couldn't simply shut it out like a bad dream. I had to know who this was, why she had kept this hidden from me, and what else I didn't know. Before I could overthink it, I made a decision. My fingers moved with purpose as I dialed her number. The phone rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. She picked up on the 4th ring, and her voice was thick with sleep. Hello? Who's Babe Red Heart Hash? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I tried to sound calm, but there was a tremor in my words. There was a pause on the other end, an uncomfortable silence that stretched long and thin. She didn't answer immediately. Then, just when I thought she wasn't going to say anything at all, she whispered back, "What are you talking about?" Her response was casual, almost too casual. Like she hadn't just sent a message to someone with a name that wasn't mine. My blood boiled beneath my skin, but I tried to keep my composure. I couldn't let myself slip into the chaos of anger, not yet. The message. The one I just got. Who's Babe Red Heart Hash? I repeated, my voice now shaking with the weight of everything I was feeling. The other end of the line was silent for a long while, and when she spoke, I could hear the thin veneer of panic in her voice. It's nothing, she said quickly. I was just messing around. It's not important. Not important. I could feel my pulse quicken as I leaned forward. Then why didn't you tell me about it? Why haven't you mentioned anyone else, someone who clearly means something to you? Her breath hitched, and for the first time since the conversation began, I could hear the crack in her voice. It's not what you think, she stammered. I didn't mean for you to see that. It was just a mistake, a slip-up. That's all. I was no longer listening to her words, only feeling the rush of blood in my ears, the quickening of my pulse, the tightening in my chest. The words were becoming a blur, and I could feel my mind clouding over, consumed by thoughts that I couldn't shake. I need to know who that is, I said. My words were blunt, cutting through the fog of disbelief. She hesitated, and when she spoke, her voice was barely audible. It's no one. Really. Just an old friend. Someone I used to talk to a long time ago. It's nothing. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something inside me, something dark and guttural, told me that it was too simple. Too easy. There had to be more to this. Then why didn't you tell me? I pressed, my anger seeping through. Why hide it? Why act like everything was fine when you were messaging someone else behind my back? She stopped, and for a moment, I could hear the hesitation in her breath. I didn't think it mattered, she finally said. I thought it was just a stupid thing from the past, something that didn't have any bearing on us. I never meant to hurt you, I swear. Her words were soft, but they did little to ease the tight knot in my stomach. I could feel myself unraveling, piece by piece. The lies, the secrets, the feeling that something so simple, so harmless, could be hiding something far darker. I had a choice to make. I could demand more answers. I could push her to confess everything, the truth, the whole truth. Or I could take a step back, let this all go, and pretend that nothing was wrong. But in that moment, as the silence between us stretched long, I knew I couldn't pretend. Not anymore. I couldn't keep going like this, holding my breath every time a message popped up on her phone, wondering if it would be from someone else. I was done. I think I need some time, I said, my voice cold and distant now. I need time to think. To figure this out. I'm sorry, she said, her voice shaky. I really am. I hung up before she could say anything else. The sound of the call disconnecting was like the final nail in the coffin. I didn't know where this was going. I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let myself be deceived any longer. I sat there, the phone still in my hand, staring at the black screen as if it might offer some kind of explanation. The world felt suspended, like I was floating in some limbo between reality and the lie I had just uncovered. The adrenaline was still rushing through my veins, but there was nothing to fuel it now. No more anger, no more questions, just a deep, unshakable feeling of betrayal. The minutes ticked by in a way that felt both endless and fleeting, but I didn't move. My mind replayed the conversation over and over, her voice echoing in my head, "It's nothing, just an old friend." But I knew better. How could something that didn't matter leave me feeling so hollow? How could a text from someone she'd never meant to hurt me with the word babe attached be anything less than significant? I set the phone down on the coffee table, away from me, like it had become radioactive. I couldn't touch it anymore, not without my gut twisting painfully. The walls of the apartment suddenly felt too close, like they were pressing in on me. I stood up, pacing, needing to move, needing something to distract me from the mess of emotions that were threatening to overtake me. Why did she do it? It didn't make sense. We'd been together for almost 2 years. 2 years of shared mornings, late-night talks, vacations we swore we'd never forget, promises we both believed in. I had trusted her, completely, without hesitation. But now, that trust was unraveling in front of me, a tangled mess of unspoken truths. I couldn't let it go. Not yet. Not until I had all the pieces, all the answers. I pulled my jacket off the couch and tossed it on the chair by the door. My fingers itched to call her again, demand that she tell me everything, but I knew that wouldn't help. If I went down that path again, I would just end up with the same vague answers. I needed something concrete. Something I could hold in my hands and see for myself. I thought about the message, the way it had appeared, as if it had always been there, lingering in the corners of my mind, waiting for me to notice. It wasn't like me to distrust her. We had never fought about anything serious. Sure, we bickered about little things, who forgot to buy groceries or who left their laundry in the dryer for too long, but nothing like this. This was a whole different level of betrayal. This wasn't about forgetting to put the dishes away, this was about something much deeper. I reached for my phone again, hesitated, then opened the text thread between her and Babe Red Heart Hash. The message was still there, unread. I felt sick again just looking at it. But I couldn't stop myself. I tapped it. Her name, Lily. It had always felt so right on my tongue. But now it seemed foreign, almost unreal, like a mask she had been wearing the whole time, and I was just seeing the cracks for the first time. I started scrolling through the conversation, my fingers trembling with each swipe. I tried to focus, tried to look at it with some sense of detachment, but I couldn't. The words were etched into my brain, burning through my thoughts. There it was again. Are you coming over tonight? I didn't know who this person was, this old friend who had somehow earned the right to be called Babe with a heart emoji. I had no idea how long it had been going on or what it meant for us. My mind raced with 1,000 possibilities. What if it was just a harmless conversation? What if she was just being playful, harmlessly reminiscing? But that didn't feel right. I clicked on the contact name. It didn't show much, just a first name, nothing specific. But there was something about that nameless, faceless figure that bothered me. I needed to know who they were. My hand gripped the phone harder as I looked at the contact information, staring at the blank space where a photo or a last name should have been. A sudden realization hit me. The absence of details was like an open wound. Why didn't I know anything about this person? Why hadn't Lily ever mentioned them to me? They were clearly important enough to have their own little private exchange with her, but I was kept in the dark. I felt sick to my stomach, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me harder than any betrayal ever could. I couldn't keep hiding behind uncertainty. I needed to confront her, face to face. I needed her to explain everything to me, to be honest with me in a way she hadn't been before. Before I could stop myself, I found myself dialing her number again. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. This time, when she picked up, I heard the faint rustling of sheets in the background, the familiar sound of her breathing. She was awake. She was aware that I was calling. Hello? Her voice was cautious, guarded. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I wanted to demand everything, ask her 100 questions, but I didn't know where to start. Instead, I let the silence fill the space between us. Lily, I began slowly, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice, I need you to tell me the truth. Who is this person you're texting? Why haven't you told me about them before? She exhaled sharply, as if she'd been holding her breath, unsure of how to answer. The silence hung heavy between us before she spoke again. I told you, it's nothing. Just an old friend. I didn't believe her. It was as simple as that. I didn't believe a word she was saying. This isn't just nothing, I said, my voice growing more urgent. Why don't I know about them? Why didn't you tell me? You were texting them like it was nothing. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, but she didn't respond right away. I didn't think it was important, she said quietly. I didn't think it would matter. I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. You didn't think it would matter? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Lily, everything matters. And you know it. You can't just hide things like this from me and expect it to be okay. I'm sorry, she said softly, her voice breaking with what sounded like regret. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. The apology felt hollow, like a plea to absolve herself of guilt without actually confronting what she'd done. I could feel the tension rising again, that thick knot in my chest tightening even further. I don't know what to believe anymore, Lily, I said, the words slipping out in a rush. I need to see you. We need to talk. In person. I don't think that's a good idea, she replied, her voice strained. I could feel the uncertainty rolling off her words, and it made my skin crawl. Whatever it was, whatever truth she was hiding, I knew it wasn't something I was ready to hear. But I had to. I couldn't just walk away and pretend it didn't matter. Not when my entire world felt like it was breaking apart around me. I'm coming over, I said firmly, the decision already made. There was a long silence before she responded, her voice barely audible. Okay. But please, don't hate me. The words struck me harder than anything else she'd said. And as I hung up, I realized I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to forgive her. I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. I stood there for a few moments, staring at the phone in my hand. The words, but please, don't hate me, echoed in my mind. My body felt like it was on fire, every muscle tense, my mind racing in 1,000 different directions. She had said it. She'd said it like it was the last plea before a final goodbye. But it wasn't a goodbye yet. I had to see her. I needed to see her, to hear her voice in person, to look her in the eyes and understand why she'd been hiding things from me. This wasn't just about one text message. It wasn't about one moment of weakness. It was about everything that had been kept in the dark, all the things she hadn't said, all the parts of her life that didn't include me. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, slipping my arms into the sleeves with a sense of finality. My hands were cold, even though the room was warm. I looked around the apartment for the last time, trying to commit every detail to memory. Every picture on the walls, every book scattered across the coffee table, the smell of her perfume still lingering in the air, it all felt so foreign now. I couldn't remember when it had stopped feeling like ours, and started feeling like mine. The drive to her place felt like an eternity. Every red light, every stop sign stretched on forever, giving me more time to think, more time to second-guess myself. But deep down, I knew I couldn't turn back. This wasn't just about a relationship anymore, this was about the truth. And I wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. I parked outside her building, the familiar street light casting a soft glow over the sidewalk. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor, and I had been up there more times than I could count. I used to love coming here, the comfort of her space, the way everything seemed to fall into place when we were together. But tonight, everything felt different. It felt like I was walking into a stranger's house. I knocked on the door, the sound of my knuckles against the wood reverberating in the silence. I didn't know what to expect, didn't know if she would open the door with that same smile I had seen 1,000 times before or if she would hide behind the walls she had built around herself. The door opened slowly, and there she stood. Lily. Her hair was loose, falling in soft waves around her shoulders, and her eyes were wide, like a deer caught in headlights. She looked at me with a mixture of relief and fear, and for the first time, I saw the vulnerability in her I hadn't noticed before. It was as if she was holding back tears, or maybe the weight of her own guilt. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, looking at her, trying to read her. The woman I had known for 2 years, the woman I thought I understood, was suddenly a stranger. There was something different about her, something off. I couldn't quite place it, but it was there, lurking beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, pushing past the fear, the doubt, and the hurt. I had to know. I had to hear it from her lips, whatever it was she was hiding. "I'm not here to fight, Lily," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm here to understand. I need to know the truth. I need you to tell me what's been going on." Her eyes shifted to the floor, like she couldn't bear to look at me. She bit her lip, the tension in her body obvious. It made me wonder how many times she had rehearsed this moment, how many times she had practiced the words she was about to say in her head. "I never meant for you to find out like this," she said, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you." I felt a sharp pang in my chest, a sting of something I couldn't define. I stepped closer to her, my hand reaching out instinctively. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I needed her to feel real again. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "Why didn't you tell me? Why all the secrecy?" She looked at me, her eyes filling with tears, but she didn't cry. She just stood there, like she was frozen in time. "I didn't want to lose you," she whispered. "I didn't want you to see me differently. I didn't want you to think I was someone I'm not." My heart dropped into my stomach as the weight of her words sank in. She wasn't talking about the text. She wasn't talking about the Babe Red Heart hash message that had set all of this in motion. She was talking about something deeper. Something darker. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," she said, her voice barely audible now. I've been seeing someone else." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I felt the air leave my lungs, like all the breath had been knocked out of me in an instant. I stepped back, the room spinning, my vision blurry. I had prepared myself for a lot of things. I had told myself it wasn't going to be that bad, that maybe it was a misunderstanding. But this? This was a whole different level. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lily hesitated for a moment, and then she finally spoke. "His name is Evan. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. It started out innocent, just texting, but then, it turned into more." I felt my legs give out beneath me, and I sank down onto the couch, the weight of her confession crushing me. I didn't know what to do with this information. I didn't know how to process it, how to make sense of the pieces she was handing me. I had trusted her. I had believed in her. And now, all of that was slipping away, falling through my fingers like sand. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked again, my voice shaking. She was silent for a long time. She just stood there, looking at me, her arms crossed tightly in front of her, like she was bracing herself for what was to come. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I was scared that if I told you, you'd leave. And I didn't want to lose you. But now I see. I should have told you the truth from the start." I didn't know what to say. The words I wanted to speak felt lodged in my throat, stuck behind the hurt and the anger and the disbelief. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her why she had done this, why she had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But instead, I just sat there, staring at her, trying to make sense of everything. "I don't know how to fix this," I said finally, my voice hoarse. "I don't know if I can." She nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if we can either. But I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, for everything." I couldn't say anything else. I couldn't bring myself to speak, not when everything felt so broken. The truth had finally come out, but it hadn't set me free. It only left me more lost than I had ever been. I didn't know how long I sat there. Time lost all meaning as I stared at the floor, trying to piece together what had just happened. Her confession hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. My body felt like it was made of stone, frozen in place, and yet my mind was in overdrive, racing through 1,000 scenarios, each one more painful than the last. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, all I could do was sit there and try to process the broken shards of what had been my life. Was this real? Was she really standing in front of me, admitting that she had been seeing someone else for months? That everything we had built, everything I had trusted, was built on a lie? I glanced up at her, and for the first time, I saw her not as the woman I loved, but as someone else, someone I didn't know. She wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried, leaving her face pale and tired, like she had spent hours, maybe days, carrying this burden. She was standing there, waiting for me to do something, to say something, but I couldn't find the words. I wanted to ask how long it had been going on. I wanted to know if it was just physical, just a fling, or if it was something deeper, something she felt for this. Evan. But asking those questions felt like I was stepping into a void, into a place where I would only find more pain. How could I even begin to understand something so cruel, so careless? Instead, I stood up, my legs shaky, my mind clouded with disbelief. I had to move. I had to get out of here. I had to escape from this moment before it consumed me. My voice cracked as I started, but I couldn't finish the sentence. I couldn't even form the words. I turned away, pacing around the small living room, my hands running through my hair in frustration. I could feel her eyes on me, watching me, waiting for me to say something, anything. But what was there to say? What was there left to say when the foundation of everything had just crumbled beneath me? I need you to leave, I said, my voice quieter now, the anger and pain blending into something almost hollow. I had no energy for anger anymore. There was no point. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to demand answers or explanations. I just wanted the space to breathe, to think, to make sense of what had happened. She didn't argue. She didn't fight me on it. Instead, she nodded, her expression unreadable. And in that moment, I realized just how much I didn't know her. She grabbed her purse from the counter, the soft rustle of the leather bag in the stillness of the room sounding louder than it ever had before. She moved slowly, deliberately, like she had already made her peace with this. Like she had already resigned herself to the consequences of her actions. I couldn't even look at her. I couldn't bear to see the woman who had just destroyed everything we had. She stopped by the door, turning to face me one last time. "I'm sorry," she said again, the words coming out almost like a whisper, like she didn't expect them to mean anything anymore. "I know," I muttered, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her with a finality that sent a wave of numbness over me. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where she had just been, feeling like I had been abandoned in some kind of dream that I couldn't wake up from. I don't know how long it took before I moved again. Everything felt slow, almost surreal. Like I was detached from my own body, walking through some kind of fog. But eventually, I managed to sit down on the couch, my fingers resting on the edge of the cushion as I tried to catch my breath. I reached for my phone, my heart heavy in my chest as I unlocked it and stared at the screen. The message from Babe Red Heart Hash was still there, staring back at me like a cruel reminder. I hadn't imagined it. It wasn't just a glitch, a mistake. The words were real. The betrayal was real. And now, I had no idea what came next. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, my thoughts running in circles, chasing after one another with no clear destination. I couldn't even remember the last time I felt this empty. Like everything had been drained out of me, and I was left with nothing but this hollow shell. I stood up again, my movements mechanical as I made my way to the kitchen, needing something, anything, to fill the silence. I opened the fridge, not really caring about what was inside, but I grabbed a bottle of water and drank it quickly, the cold liquid doing nothing to cool the fire burning in my chest. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the empty space in front of me. What was I supposed to do now? What was I supposed to feel? There was a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. I wanted to feel angry, wanted to feel like I had the right to storm out of that apartment and leave it all behind. But I couldn't muster the strength. Instead, I just felt lost. Completely lost. How could someone I had shared everything with turn into this stranger? Someone who had lied to my face, someone who had carried on behind my back, and someone who now stood there apologizing like it was supposed to fix everything. Was that all it took? A few whispered words and a promise to do better? Would she really change? Or was this just the start of something deeper? I didn't have the answers. And I wasn't sure I wanted to find them. I leaned back in my chair, the tension in my body finally starting to ease. But the ache, the gnawing pain of betrayal, remained. It was like a wound that wouldn't heal, a scar that would never fade. All I knew was that everything was different now. Nothing would ever be the same. Not with Lily, and not with myself. I had to find a way to move forward, even if that meant leaving behind everything I thought I knew about love. But where do you go when the ground beneath your feet is nothing but rubble? The days after she left felt like a blur, one long, endless stretch of numbness, filled with empty hours and hollow moments. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating in a way I had never known. I thought I could get up, I thought I could pull myself together, but every time I stood, my legs felt too weak to hold me. Each step forward felt like walking through thick, sticky mud that refused to release its grip. I went through the motions. I went to work, met up with friends who didn't know the truth, and kept up appearances, smiling when I had to, laughing when I needed to. But inside, everything was broken. Everything felt like it had been ripped apart, leaving jagged pieces of myself scattered across the ground. How could she do this? How could she throw away everything we had built, everything I thought we shared, for something else, someone else? I kept asking myself that question over and over, but there was no answer. Just silence. Lily hadn't contacted me since the night she left. No calls, no texts, no explanations. Part of me thought that maybe that was for the best, that we needed the space to heal, to figure out what we truly wanted. But another part of me, the part one hated, kept wondering if she was out there, somewhere, happy. Was she with Evan? Had she moved on already? Was that why she couldn't face me anymore? Did she think I was too much of a burden to deal with? The nights were the worst. When the world went dark and quiet, that was when the weight of it all pressed down the hardest. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and feel the emptiness creep in. I thought I could just fall asleep and forget about it, but my mind refused to shut off. Every time I closed my eyes, her face would flash before me, her smile, her laugh, her touch. And then, just like that, I'd be wide awake again, heart pounding, chest aching, with the same crushing realization sinking deeper into my bones. She was gone. She was gone, and I didn't know how to fix it. I still had the phone. The one she had left behind. I hadn't touched it in days, but there it was, sitting on the counter, like a constant reminder of everything that had fallen apart. Her name, still saved in my contacts, still a part of the list of people I could call if I needed to hear her voice again. The Babe Red Heart hash was still there too, the message she had sent the night before everything unraveled. I couldn't bring myself to delete it. I couldn't erase the remnants of her, not yet. Not when the pain was still so fresh. I remember picking it up one afternoon, my hands shaking as I opened her messages. I had no real reason to look, no real reason to torture myself, but I needed to know. I needed to hear her voice again, even if it was only through the screen. But there was nothing new. Nothing. It was like she had disappeared, taking every trace of herself with her, leaving behind only the ghost of what we had shared. I scrolled through the old messages, reading them over and over, trying to find something that would explain everything, some kind of clue, some sign that I missed. I couldn't find it. It was just us, talking about our day, making plans for the future, laughing at some stupid inside joke. I wanted to believe that was real. I wanted to believe that the love we had wasn't just a lie. But it was hard. So hard. I put the phone down, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know if I was looking for her forgiveness or my own. All I knew was that I felt like I was drowning in this void, and there was no way out. The weeks passed in a haze. People at work noticed the change in me, but they didn't know what had happened. I had become a shell of the person I used to be. The guy who laughed too loud, the guy who made everyone feel comfortable, the guy who had his shit together. Now I was the guy who avoided eye contact, the guy who looked like he hadn't slept in days, the guy who showed up just enough to get by. And then, one day, I saw him. I had just stepped out of the coffee shop, my mind preoccupied with thoughts of what to do next, when I caught a glimpse of someone across the street. A guy. Standing there, waiting for a cab. And for a brief moment, I thought it was him. My chest tightened, my heart skipping a beat as I took in his posture, the way he held himself. It was like everything stopped. The world around me became a blur, and all I could focus on was him. But as I took a step forward, I saw his face clearly. And it wasn't Evan. It was just some guy. A stranger. I felt the breath leave my lungs in a slow exhale, my body going limp as I realized that I wasn't sure who I was looking for anymore. I didn't know what I was hoping for, or what I thought I would find. But that moment, that tiny moment of anticipation, made me realize something. I wasn't just trying to avoid the pain anymore. I was trying to escape the idea of what she had done to me. What she had done to us. And that's when I understood. The problem wasn't just that she had betrayed me. It wasn't just that she had cheated. It was that, in that moment, I had forgotten how to let go. I had forgotten how to move forward. I had spent so much time looking at the past, at the things I couldn't change, that I had lost sight of what was ahead. I didn't have all the answers, not yet. But I realized that I had to start somewhere. I had to find a way out of this fog, this crushing weight. I had to remember who I was before her. I had to rebuild from the ground up. I wasn't sure if I could do it alone, but I had to try. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe that was all I could do. I walked away from the street, my steps slow but purposeful. I wasn't running away from the hurt anymore. I wasn't running away from the memories. I was walking towards something new, something I couldn't see yet, but something that had to be out there. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe that I could find it.